Did you have a certain special someone to spend Valentine's Day with this year? Yeah, me neither. To cope with this, I subjected myself to a method of torture that was so egregiously inhumane, Christopher Hitchens would have said, "Yeah, I'm not trying that. That's torture." I was one of 5 people on Earth who saw Madame Web in theaters. I'm going to lie to you guys. Madame Web is a cinematic masterpiece and might be the greatest movie ever made. What, you don't believe me? That wasn't convincing?
You're an inspired scientist, but you're a terrible liar.
At the most fundamental level, Madame Web is a movie that exists, but I really wish that it didn't. I never planned on making this video. By the time you see this, it will have been like a month since I saw this in theaters on Valentine's Day. Yeah, this video, it took me a while. I didn't see the point in doing a simple review when everyone already knows that it's laughably bad. So that gave me the bright idea to make this video into what you see it as now. I think the length of the video speaks for itself. I went into this movie knowing full well that it would be bad, but as it would turn out, Madame Web is not a bad movie. It is genuinely terrible. It's one of the worst superhero movies I have ever seen. I can't say words can't describe how bad this movie is because I found enough of them to talk about this failed abortion of a film for an hour and some change. You're welcome, by the way. The fact that this movie wasn't destroyed or locked away in a vault with no key or used as a tax write-off and was actually released into theaters is a crime against humanity because this movie made me lose my faith in humanity. Because this movie has no humanity. There is no saving this movie or defending it. I don't even think Sony has or is trying to defend it, but if they did, they would, I don't know, just hire Alan Dershowitz to do it. If you've been online in the past month, you've heard everyone drag this movie. Everyone has already gave their review, so everyone already knows that it's bad. As usual, I'm late to the party. If you're expecting an apology, you're not gonna get one because I'm just glad I actually made this video and posted it. I am tired of just discarding a video idea just because I didn't get it posted the day or two after a new movie came out. Nobody should ever give up on something that they want to do and making things they want to make. Unless, of course, you're the people who made this movie, in which case I speak for everyone who paid money to see this in theaters.
Are you actually this stupid? I mean, what the hell is wrong with you? I'm really asking.
I have no interest in being civil or respectful just because making movies is hard. I've never made a movie, I've never claimed to know how to make one, especially one that's good. But I do like watching them, especially ones that are good. And I will admit, I do enjoy ripping into something I think deserves to be torn apart. And believe me, this movie deserves all the smoke. None of what I'm going to say is directed toward the production crew members who are having orders barked at them for 14 hours a day while they barely make a living wage, if they even make one at all, or the actors involved in this movie. It is not their fault this movie is a heaping, steaming pile of dog shit. My condolences to all of you for having your name attached to this. I am mad at the people who are doing the barking. The people who make an absurd amount of money to make these movies. And they have shown that they are either physically incapable of making something good that isn't Spider-Verse, or they simply don't want to. They just have no intention of doing anything different because the people who go see these movies are all brain-dead, dork-ass losers who will eat literal pig shit if it has the Marvel logo attached to it. Or at least, that's what they seem to think. I have nothing nice to say about this movie. Just so there's no confusion on how I feel,
Now let me be clear.
this movie is garbage. It is so fucking bad. It is terrible in every conceivable way. And I'm begging you, please, do not spend any of your money to buy or rent this on streaming. Instead, you could watch something like, I don't know, Pirates of the Caribbean. Those movies are cool, except the 4th and the 5th one. I don't like those Pirates of the Caribbean movies. I just like the first 3 Pirates of the Caribbean movies. Just throwing that out there, if you have Disney Plus, I'm not bringing up the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise for any other reason. Actually, disregard that, because I'm just gonna take one for the team and explain it to you guys. And by it, I mean the entire movie. I wasn't kidding when I said this wasn't just a review. I started writing and just didn't stop, until eventually I was just going through the whole story beat by beat and realized, oh shit, this is gonna be a pretty big video, and the first video I've uploaded in almost a year. Before we get into that, I need to establish some context for those of you tuning in who don't know why this movie is the way that it is, and why people hate it so much, and why people hate the studio behind it more than anything.
Let's try that again.
A week ago, I spent my life racing against time.
Despite featuring the Marvel logo and being a Marvel movie, Madam Web has absolutely nothing to do with the Marvel Cinematic Universe, aka the MCU. Now, while the MCU has been going through a very rough patch as of late, it's being handled by Marvel Studios, owned by Disney. Over the years, different companies and studios have held the rights to different Marvel characters or entire areas of the Marvel Universe, which means Marvel Studios hasn't been able to make all the movies and use all the characters they've probably wanted to. Just for example, Disney acquired 20th Century Fox not that long ago, so now they've essentially absorbed their rights to parts of the Marvel Universe, which is why Deadpool and Deadpool 2 aren't part of the MCU, but Deadpool 3 will be. The main culprit here and the central villain to this video is Sony, who has had the rights to Spider-Man since 1999. After their second outing with Andrew Garfield didn't make enough money at the box office, they decided it would be in their best interest to work with Marvel Studios, who would then reboot the franchise, again, with a new lead and have it set in the MCU. When I say their best interest, I of course mean they would make a lot of money, which is all they care about, so to their credit, Sony is the reason the Tom Holland Spider-Man movies exist, but to their much-deserved discredit, and this should not be a shock at all, they now appear to be on track to completely derail and destroy those movies too. Sony having the rights to Spider-Man doesn't mean they just have the rights to Spider-Man, it means they have the rights to him and something like 900 other characters from the world of Spider-Man. And since money is all they care about, they saw no reason for why they should only make Spider-Man movies, especially ones they can't control every single aspect of. This makes complete sense, and on its face, it's not inherently a bad idea, because even though the vast majority of their collection is made up of supporting characters and people with little to no actual significance, there are still characters people would pay to see a movie about.
Hi, I'm Saul Goodman. Did you know that you have rights? The Constitution says you do, and so do I.
Venom? Fine, that makes sense. I saw the first two, and sure, they were dumb and not very good, but I had fun watching and expect the same for a third one. Okay, so you made a Venom movie with Tom Hardy. Now what do?
Excuse me, Skibidi Toilet or Phantom Tack?
Rizzler Academy Volume 10.
I reviewed Morbius here on my channel 2 years ago when it came out. I don't know what I said in it because I don't remember and I don't want to think about it, but I probably wasn't as harsh as I should have been. But just in concept, the Morbius movie isn't the worst idea they could have come up with. It just wouldn't be the first thing I would greenlight after a guaranteed box office success like Venom, and I certainly wouldn't cast Jared Leto either, but hey, I actually don't know what I was going to say here. I don't have anything else to add. I just wouldn't have cast Jared Leto because I don't fucking like him. Just thought you guys should know. Anyways, Morbius was bad. It wasn't dumb and not very great, but still fun to watch like Venom was. It was just bad. It was so bad that people talked about it online non-stop, which Sony took notice of and decided to re-release the movie after its first run in theaters ended. Apparently not understanding that Morbius was being mentioned everywhere because it was bad and no one wanted to go see it. And so naturally it flopped a second time and everyone laughed. Sony went on to announce more movies for the likes of Kraven the Hunter with Aaron Taylor Johnson and El Muerto starring Bad Bunny. Kraven the Hunter is a well-known Spider-Man villain that was meant to appear in at least 2 previous movies but ultimately never did, and has appeared in plenty of other Spider-Man media. El Muerto, on the other hand, is arguably an even more famous Spider-Man villain from the comics, most notable for appearing in only 2 issues in 2006. That's not even a joke. He appeared in 2 individual comic issues 18 years ago. That is it. To make matters worse and funnier, Bad Bunny walked away from the movie last year, which meant the El Muerto movie would sadly be canceled. Except I'm lying, and Sony is reportedly still planning to move forward on the project without Bad Bunny, even though he is the only reason it was even greenlit in the first place. Alongside Kraven the Hunter and glorified background character, Sony announced Madam Web in the spring of 2022. Dakota Johnson spoke about how excited she was to make a cool action movie, which is hilarious in retrospect, but I'll get back to that when I talk about the actual movie, and how cool it was to join the Marvel Universe. She later went on to say she spoke to Elizabeth Olsen at one point, who told her she had a great time being in the movies and made her feel more comfortable with the pressure that comes with joining Marvel. When you juxtapose this with Karen Gillan telling Matt Smith that she loved working on the movies and he should go for it being the movie that gave us this iconic scene, and when you see how Dakota Johnson and Sydney Sweeney tagged Marvel Studios in their Instagram post talking about their involvement in the film, it starts to add up as evidence to support the theory that these people were fully convinced they were joining the MCU and had no idea this was unrelated and part of the Sony Spider-Man universe. If you're still not convinced for whatever reason, Dakota Johnson left her talent agency and got a new one literally a week after the first trailer dropped, so yeah, Now, I'm not saying Sony is straight up lying to these people about the movies they're signing on for. I mean, it certainly wouldn't surprise me, but I'm not saying I know or think they are. I think you can make the argument that they're lying by omission, assuming that anyone ever asked for clarification, which I doubt they would, considering these people are celebrities in Hollywood whose lives don't revolve around knowing everything about whatever nerds on the internet like. From where I sit, it seems painfully obvious that these people thought they were going to be the newest addition to and the next big star in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. If I were a betting man, I'd bet my YouTube earnings for this month on there being something in their contract stating they can't sue Sony for damage to their reputation, brand, or image as a result of starring in one of these movies. The trailer for this movie is incredible in its own right, not only because it's probably the reason Dakota Johnson dropped the people who likely convinced her to take the role in the first place, but because it gave us this iconic line.
Without sound, we wouldn't have been able to hear such classic lines as, "You're gonna need a bigger boat. I'll have what she's having. And he was in the Amazon with my mother when she was researching spiders just before she died."
That line is essentially the Madam Web version of "It's Morbid Time," except Morbius never said that in the trailer for Morbius, and after I saw Madam Web, I realized that line wasn't even in the movie. If you haven't seen the movie, first of all, good, and second, don't, because this trailer fully encapsulates what the movie is like, at least in terms of the dialogue, line delivery, editing, and audio mixing. Sure, the trailer is hilarious and told everyone to buckle up for an absolute show, but I have to give credit to the movie's marketing team because everything else that followed somehow managed to capture the essence of this movie so perfectly, from the visuals to the overall execution. Instead of having the first official look at Madam Web's suit be revealed in the trailer, a Vanity Fair article, or an Empire magazine, this movie's genius marketing strategy challenged the status quo by simply not doing any of that. There just never was an official look at Madam Web's suit, so the first official look that I got of it was when I opened up Reddit and someone posted a picture of it on a bottle of fucking ocean spray. There is so much more, and credit goes to Novamania17 on Twitter for laying out the complete timeline. That image I used in the thumbnail came after the ocean spray bottle was discovered, which, I mean, just look at it. It's a picture of Madam Web. They released a bunch of posters, all of which used the same picture of Dakota Johnson. There was that one ad with her speaking directly into the camera, and it's interesting to say the least.
So, while my character in the movie may be able to see the future, I also can. And I know what the future brings. I know that when you see Madam Web, you're gonna love it. In fact, I think you're gonna see it twice.
What?
Oh, I don't think so.
For reasons we may never know, they paid for a Madam Web helicopter to be displayed in India. They released this poster, which is better than the movie itself. And while she was hosting SNL, Dakota Johnson described the movie like this.
It is in the Marvel Universe, and it also stars Sydney Sweeney. So it's kind of like if AI generated your boyfriend's perfect movie.
To be fair, at least half that description is accurate, but I'll let you guess which half that is. Quick editor's note, Dakota Johnson spoke very openly and pretty brutally honest about the backlash that Madam Web got while I was making this video, so I just want to read what she said. Quote, "Unfortunately, I'm not surprised that this has gone down the way it has. Films are made by a filmmaker and a team of artists around them. You cannot make art based on numbers and algorithms. My feeling has been for a long time that audiences are extremely smart, and executives have started to believe that they're not. Audiences will always be able to sniff out bullshit. Even if films start to be made with AI, humans aren't gonna fucking wanna see those. It was definitely an experience for me to make that movie. I had never done anything like it before. I probably will never do anything like it again because I don't make sense in that world, and I know that now. But sometimes in this industry, you sign on to something and it's one thing, and then as you're making it, it becomes a completely different thing, and you're like, wait, what? But it was a real learning experience, and of course, it's not nice to be a part of something that's ripped to shreds. But I can't say that I don't understand." So, yeah, that was a lot, but I'm done talking about this movie without actually talking about the stuff in the movie, so hopefully that was enough context for you if you even needed it to begin with. So now we get to the part where I talk about the movie itself and spoil it from start to finish, so if you give a shit about not hearing spoilers for this movie, you shouldn't. Please, do not go see this movie. So yeah, I'm spoiling everything in this movie from start to finish, but I'm not going to issue an official spoiler warning because that kind of implies that I'm talking about something I and my audience cares about, and I certainly don't care about this movie like that, and I especially hope that they don't either. They includes you as well. Please subscribe. Right off the bat, the opening sequence sets the tone and prepares the viewer for what to expect for the rest of the movie. The tone, of course, being all over the place, establishing that this movie has no interest in being a real movie, and that as a viewer, you should expect nothing from this movie for the next hour and 45 minutes. This movie starts off in 1973 in the Amazon with Cassie's mom, who is researching spiders right before she's about to die. We can tell she's researching spiders because she's looking intensely at a spider web and taking pictures of it. Then we are introduced to the man who was in the Amazon with Cassie's mom when she was researching spiders right before she Okay, I'm sorry. I'll stop. This is Walmart bargain bin Lalo Salamanca, or who the movie insists I be referring to as Ezekiel. Unfortunately for everyone watching, he's the main villain. I say it's unfortunate because he's one of the worst parts of the movie, which I will talk about later when he's doing other stuff. The writers assume that if you paid to see this movie, you must be an absolute fucking moron. So they make sure every line of dialogue tells you exactly what is happening and why and what people are doing or are going to do and why. Ezekiel gets the first line in the movie and his delivery is terrible. Sadly, it also never gets better.
Do you think we're close?
He tells the audience that he's Madam Web's mom's security and he's impatient because she hasn't found the spider yet. What spider, you may ask? Don't worry, they'll tell you.
Dead specimens show that the peptides in the spider's venom, they supercharge their cellular structure.
Great. I really understood that well.
The best part about having dialogue in a movie that is this bad means there's a lot of potential for hilarious moments that were never meant to be funny at all, and trust me, there are plenty. After hearing that exposition dump, Ezekiel says,
That spider can give superhuman strength and power like las arañas.
I know what you're probably thinking, okay, what the f is Las Arañas? To which I would reply, have you not figured out by now to just shut up and wait literally 3 seconds for someone on screen to explain everything? I'm sorry, that was harsh. And to be fair, in this case, the answer is given milliseconds after. So following that line from Ezekiel, Madam Web's mom says,
Las arañas, the mythical spider people who run across the treetops and punish evil men with their black poison touch.
I like to base my research in science, not legends, Mr. Sims.
Now, I assume everyone watching has seen a movie before, so I don't feel like I need to explain to you guys why this is shit writing and dialogue. I just want to point out that it's only been 2 minutes and 30 seconds. This exchange also establishes something common in movies like this that I can't stand, which is when someone says or explains something insane and then someone else says something crazy on a different playing field, and the first person looks at or responds to them like what they said has no chance of being real while what they just said makes perfect sense. These spiders are extremely hard to find and nobody's ever captured one alive, but I know they can do these crazy things that no other organism can do. Yeah, you like those Peruvian treetop spider people.
Are you out of your damn mind?
We have no idea what anyone is doing here, but she makes sure to mention that these spiders can cure a bunch of different diseases. Not sure how she knows that if no one's ever captured one alive, but okay. I forgot to mention, she's pregnant here, and not like first or second trimester, I mean she's minutes away from giving birth. Literally. She decides for some reason to be rude to Ezekiel, who was only in this scene because he was bringing her an umbrella, I guess. By the way, it's raining in this scene apparently. After deciding she's done looking at the spider web, we're back at camp when... Sorry, I just realized I don't actually know this woman's name. 1 second. Let's see, it's, Constance? Her name is Constance? Oh, duh. I just remembered now, guys. Sorry, had to really reach back there and think. There was one scene out of the entire movie where someone mentioned Cassie is the daughter of Constance, and no, it is not in this opening scene. So Constance gets back to camp and says she found the spider and shows everyone, and here we get a taste of what's to come with the CGI, directing, and editing, and holy shit, all of it sucks. The spider is entirely CGI, and no, it's not a giant spider, it's like a normal-sized spider in a small glass jar. The CGI is made even more unconvincing simply due to the camera work in this scene, and I'm like 90% sure they filmed this on Take Your Child to Work Day, and a Sony executive demanded their kid be allowed to direct a scene because they're taking a theater production class at their local middle school, and that's why the camera keeps randomly zooming in and out whenever someone walks into view of the camera or when something just fucking happens. It really does feel like a kid watched their first Sam Raimi movie, got a hold of the camera and said, trust me, this will look cool. But it doesn't look cool. I have a headache already and I want to throw up. But I can't get sick now because, oh my god, oh no, that dude we met a minute and 30 seconds ago, he just killed everybody in the camp. Surprise, he's a bad guy. He's been looking for this spider for years, apparently, which I only know because he tells that to
I don't understand.
I've been searching for that spider for years.
I'm starting to suspect that Constance met Ezekiel for the first time when we did like a minute and 30 seconds ago. He also tells Constance his motivation for stealing the spider, and I would give credit to the writers for this one attempt at character writing in this movie if it were good, but as is with all things in this movie, you know, it's not.
We could help so many people.
I'm not interested in helping people. No one helped me when my family was starving. My road was not as clear as yours.
She begs and pleads and tells him like 4 or 5 times, you're making the wrong decision.
You're making the wrong decision.
Give me the spider.
No, you're making the wrong decision.
While the camera is still randomly zooming in, but only when the scene is not being chopped up like Liam Neeson jumping a fence. But he's not interested and also has a gun, and while trying to pry the jar from her hands, he spares her from having to say any more of this atrocious dialogue and shoots her. He runs away with the spider and leaves her to die, but lucky for Constance, some mythical spider people who run across treetops and punish evil men with their black poison touch suddenly drop and crawl down from the trees. And in case you were wondering, yes, these are in fact the exact same people she described in detail and said were just a legend literally 3 minutes ago. Man, I am so glad this movie told me everything. I hate not knowing something 5 minutes into the start of a movie. I wish so badly that I could show you guys footage of them, but luckily for me, I took so long to make this video that now I actually can show you all. I had a whole bit where I described them in detail and I thought it was pretty funny, but there's no point in keeping that in if I can just show you all, so please enjoy whatever the fuck this is.
What am I watching? I don't know, but I hate it.
So they pick her up and they sprint through the treetops with laughably bad CGI, which had me busting out laughing in the theater. So the Peruvian spider people take Constance back to the spider cave. They put her in water and let one of those spiders bite her chest while the editors said, "Fuck it, the less they can see, the better off we'll all be." And from the water rises baby Madam Web, because one of the spider guys is lifting her out of it, not because she can like levitate her out of the womb or some shit, just to be clear. And with the first spoken line since Ezekiel shot Constance, the spider guy that saved her says,
"Her journey will not be easy, but she is strong."
Which I could already infer because 5 seconds after being born, she's not crying, so either this baby is literally built different, a minute or 2 away from death, or the editors just forgot that babies cry when they enter the world. Just to make sure the audience knows exactly where Madam Web will have to go and who she'll need to meet at some point before the 3rd act, the Peruvian spider guy continues with,
"She will come back when she needs answers, and when she does, I will be here for her."
Oh, well, isn't that convenient?
Finally, Constance dies, and now the baby starts to cry. I retract my jab at the editors for maybe forgetting that babies cry after being born, because it's very obvious this movie was trying to pay homage to Dr. Michael Morbius himself, Jared Leto in House of Gucci, for which he won a Razzie Award for Worst Supporting Actor.
Okay. You ripped my heart out and left it to die in the street.
By having baby Madam Web start crying right before transitioning to an adult Madam Web honking the horn of an ambulance.
Come on!
Would you believe it if I told you that all of that happens in just the first 6.5 minutes of this movie? I'm really asking, like, would you believe that? Because I can't believe it myself, but I just checked and it's true. So that means there is 1 hour and 40 minutes left of the runtime. I hope you're ready for it because I know I'm not.
I won't do it! I won't do it! You can't make me! You can't make me!
We jump ahead just a few years to 2003, where we see Cassie is now an adult in the small town of Queens, driving an ambulance through traffic. Now, I might be wrong here, since Cassie doesn't look directly in the camera and say, "I'm a paramedic," but if I had to guess, just based on her driving an ambulance, I'd guess she's probably a paramedic. She's having some banter with a guy named Ben who, and again, I could be wrong, might also be a paramedic. Before I say anything else, I have to mention the reports that, while still unverified, come from some of the usual Marvel scoopers and sources, and this just kind of sounds like a Sony thing to do. So take this with a grain of salt, or the entire shaker if you really want to, but the report basically says Sony wanted this movie to be a prequel to an established Spider-Man, and they chose Andrew Garfield's iteration. But then they changed their mind for some reason and wanted to pivot to Tom Holland's iteration, I guess so this could be in the MCU. And so to do this, since they already filmed the entire movie, they reportedly changed the movie's setting from the 90s to the early 2000s, all in post-production. Then after all that, Sony realized the timeline made no fucking sense and just removed every direct reference to Spider-Man. I mean, if you ask me, that sounds totally plausible given that it's Sony we're talking about, with the only part I can't believe being that Sony actually realized they made a mistake. If you're thinking, that was random, why'd you bring that up now? It's because Ben the paramedic is Ben Parker, Uncle Ben. Don't quote me here, but I don't remember this movie ever saying that his last name was Parker. I just knew going in that's who Adam Scott was playing. Anyways, Cassie is driving the ambulance, rushing and swerving through traffic, and in hindsight, I realize now this was the first real action sequence of the movie. Cassie almost hits a random girl on a skateboard who flips her off, which seems random, but isn't, because the girl she almost hit and who flipped her off is a main character in the movie, but doesn't know it yet. Cassie and Ben fill out paperwork at the hospital after bringing in a living plot device that exists just to give Cassie from Madam Web a reason to be in the same room as Cassie from Euphoria for just one scene. Her name is Julia, and she's here because she's family of the woman they brought in.
Are you all immediate family?
God.
I'm her stepdaughter.
I think she might prefer...
Yeah, it's okay, Dad. I'll see you guys back at your apartment.
Okay. Come on, buddy.
Dick. Moving on from the love of my life, Cassie and Ben are eating Chinese takeout and talking about stuff, probably. I don't know.
I peed outside and everything.
Right after that line, which I totally did not clip out of context, by the way, Ben gives Cassie an update on his dating life, which gives us our first deleted reference to Spider-Man.
So, I, kind of met someone.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
What's this one's name?
If you're anything like me and Cassie, I'm sure you're just dying to know what this person's name is. If you were a normal person and somebody asked you what somebody else's name was, you would probably just tell them what their name is, but nobody in this movie is normal because this movie is not normal. So get your coffin ready because I guess this person just doesn't have a name.
What's this one's name? Oh. Serious.
Hey Adam, can we get like a response or something?
She's a lucky lady, Ben.
Thank you.
Either the reports I mentioned that explain why direct mentions of or references to Spider-Man were cut are true, or the bad writers writing this movie did more bad writing, but either way, this scene just feels very weird and very awkward. Like, did the writers just look up the No Way Home audience theater reaction videos on YouTube and thought, oh yeah, if we just give like a very vague reference to Aunt May, people will lose their fucking minds like Captain America lifting Mjolnir. I was there in the theater on opening night, and I can assure you no one made any sound or noise except to laugh. And I can also assure you they were not laughing at things the writers intended to be jokes. If I were someone who had never seen Spider-Man and knew nothing about the character and still chose to watch this movie because I hate myself, then I don't know what the fuck I would make of this scene other than that I am watching a bad movie. This is not a clever nod. This just feels like Adam Scott forgot his line, sighed, and so Dakota Johnson improvised.
Please don't look at me like that.
I promise this kind of stuff gets worse. A lot worse.
No. You have a winning personality. I guess I got yours by mistake.
You're an asshole.
You guys got the joke, right? I just want to check in and make sure. You see, he got a fortune cookie that said he has a winning personality, and he says that he must have gotten Cassie's fortune cookie, meaning that she has a winning personality. And that is objectively hilarious because she has no personality because this movie is objectively f***ing garbage. I am literally turning into this movie. I'm so sorry. Cassie goes back home to her apartment where the camera lingers on a girl downstairs talking to her landlord, and tells them that her dad will be back soon and have the money for rent.
Give me rent.
You'll get your rent when you fix this damn door!
Just like Sydney Sweeney and that one skateboarding girl, she too will be a main character when the movie decides it's time for that to happen. Once inside, Cassie opens her window to let in a stray cat and pours it a bowl of milk. Her conversation with Ben made it pretty clear that she has nothing going on and nobody else in her life, not even a pet. She's not a single woman in her 30s with a bunch of cats. It's just one cat, and it doesn't even seem to be hers. I really love this product placement for the milk brand milk. This sure is a movie. Back at the hospital, the son and alleged only child of the woman she brought in gave her a drawing of their family, which reaffirms the aforementioned allegation.
Her little boy wanted to say thank you.
Yes! Hell yeah! Yes!
Cassie was also super weird about it and just didn't want to take it for reasons that are never stated. I guess she's just too humble? Nope. Or maybe she's secretly a Wookiee? I don't know. Your guess is as good as mine.
You know what? Mr. Ben Parker here did all the work, so
Just take it. Take it.
Take it. So, anyways.
Now back at her apartment, she looks at it and it makes her think about something.
Family. 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 Family.
To me.
Family.
Just walk away.
Cassie pulls an old suitcase out from underneath her bed, opens it, and picks up her Peruvian birth certificate to just stare at it. Dakota Johnson tries to look sad, and she comes across a photo of her mom when she was in the Amazon researching spiders right before she died. I know I said I would stop doing that, but
I lied.
The music sort of swells here, and Cassie inhales deeply to convey an emotion, I think, probably. I don't know what's going on here. If I'm being serious, this scene exists like it has emotional weight behind it, but it doesn't because the movie just started and I don't f***ing care about her dead mom. But if I'm still doing the bit, then I really don't know what's happening because there's no dialogue. There's nobody telling me how Cassie is feeling and how I should feel about how she is feeling. She picks up and opens the book her mom documented her spider science shit in, looks at it, flips through a couple pages while just looking at it. She then unlocks her first superpower, automated dialogue replacement. This movie is just packed with bad ADR, and while most of it is funny, it is still f***ing horrendous, and this line is no exception.
Hope the spiders were worth it, Mom.
I hope the spiders were worth it? Worth it for what? Does she think her mom was killed by spiders? That can't be. She knows she died in childbirth. Does she think she went to Peru, met a charming, handsome Spider-Man, and fell in love and, you know, I know you don't want to picture it, but you know, and then died giving birth to her? Surely not, otherwise Cassie would have mentioned it. Surely. Or hell, maybe it did happen entirely off screen when her mom went somewhere else in the Amazon and actually found the spider because that too happened entirely off screen.
I found it. I found the spider.
Now you die. Anyways, I'm not saying having ADR in your movie makes it a bad movie because ADR is part of the movie making process, I know that, but I have to imagine that once that was recorded, somebody played it back and listened to it and made the conscious decision to put it in the movie. I'm just left wondering why this was the take that you went with. My only guess is that nobody actually watched the movie as it was being stitched together. Because that's what happened. This movie was stitched together. This is not a film. This is a hollow corpse of an idea of what a film could theoretically be, but never was. I'm pretty sure this movie also wants to be included in those TikTok compilation videos of cool movie scene transitions, but their highlight reel only consists of this. In the next intense paramedic action sequence, Cassie and Ben arrive on scene to a car hanging off a bridge and without hesitation run to the car to pull the guy out. Now, I'm not a paramedic, and if anyone's watching that actually is, please tell me if I'm wrong, but I have a feeling there's some kind of, special protocol you have to follow if this were to ever actually happen. Like, you want to save the person who needs your help, but you don't want to die in the process in ways that could be avoided. Things like, I don't know, checking to make sure your partner's life is not still in danger by being inside the car that's hanging off the bridge before you quickly drag the other person out, shifting the weight and sending the car flying off a bridge with your partner trapped inside, as they accept that they're about to drown to death because you are bad at your job. Luckily for Uncle Ben, Cassie just so happens to unknowingly possess superpowers from mythical Peruvian spider people. So instead of drowning, she enters what can only be described as a live-action version of the Spider-Verse mixed with some of the DMT trip simulation scene from Doctor Strange. But if they had a budget of only $200 and just 2 days to render the entire thing. Except it's not even that at all. It's just a void. A void that is somehow completely devoid of
everything.
With the exception of that ugly-ass blue and green filter. They have plenty of that. I can't believe I didn't mention that until now, but yeah, this movie is f***ing head over heels for this filter. I find it truly fascinating how this something manages to be presented as just nothing. There is nothing to enjoy here. This just looks like shit. Cassie takes in all her surroundings and says, "What is this place? Some kind of Madam Web?" As she then continues to float forward, and obviously that was just a joke, but it's not like you would know for certain because chances are you didn't see this movie. So long story short, she sees and hears things from scenes that happen as the movie progresses up until the very end. I don't know if they genuinely thought this looked cool, but it doesn't. And it just speaks to how lazy the entire movie is through how this sequence tells you and shows you how Madam Web is going to win in the end. Even if that wasn't really dumb, it wouldn't matter because odds are you can't tell what the f is happening here because they're just laying audio track on top of audio track and speeding through visuals like you're about to have a seizure.
Because you are the only one who can change the future.
Come on!
So Cassie gets woken up by Uncle Ben, who welcomes her back to life after dragging her out of the water all by himself, apparently. He pretty much says he did, and there's nobody else around them. Again, I'm not a paramedic, so I don't actually know if it would make sense that nobody else tried anything at all to help her, so I'm just left assuming they all either accepted that she was a goner, or nobody else was paying attention when they arrived on scene, got the driver out, and when the car fell off the bridge. After venturing through the Madam Web verse, Cassie has now awakened her superpowers, which for now are limited to seeing the future by living through something and then suddenly living through it again, but with the full memory of it already having just happened. So for now, Cassie is convinced she's just experiencing really bad deja vu and is slowly going insane. In other words, literally me as I'm making this video. Do you remember that guy who killed Cassie's mom in the beginning? The guy I said was one of the worst things about this movie? I don't even know why I'm asking. It's not like you ever could forget who he was when I keep replaying that clip of him killing her over and over and over again. That one was for good measure, just in case you actually did somehow manage to forget who he was. But I mentioned it now because after 30 years, we are finally reintroduced to him when he goes to an opera midway through its performance to sit 2 seats to the right of some random lady. This woman who was at the opera is, for some reason, holding a Ralph Lauren Polo magazine ad from 2003 with Nacho Figueras on the cover. After noticing the man now sitting to her right, she just lets go of the magazine and drops it and doesn't even notice. Luckily for her, the charming, handsome, chivalrous man, who has definitely never killed a woman before, does notice and he picks it up for her. Instead of saying some old-school romance introductory line like, "Excuse me, miss, I believe you dropped this," he instead says nothing. Before handing it to her, he does a little, you want this? Gesture thing.
You gotta be quicker than that.
This small and seemingly incidental act of chivalry gets this woman all hot and bothered in the opera, and now I am more confused than ever. Was he flirting with her, or is this foreplay? Because I don't know what that is. Women, please tell me. Now, while this scene may sound bizarre, dumb, and unnecessary, it's actually a very clever display of one of Ezekiel's superpowers. Based on this scene alone, we can infer that Ezekiel is a master pickup artist, which makes sense given that this film takes place in 2003. If you're on the younger side of Gen Z, or God forbid you're Gen Alpha, you probably call this a display of Sigma male behavior, but you're overlooking the subtlety of his superpower here. Unspoken riz. Just to recap, Ezekiel buys a ticket for the opera, doesn't show up until halfway through the performance, sits down close, but not too close, to a random woman who brought a Polo magazine ad with her to the opera, and they say nothing to each other. She drops the magazine and doesn't notice. Ezekiel casually picks it up, lifts it up toward her, and does this to flirt with her, and says nothing to her. She takes it and says nothing to him. He turns away and looks forward at the performer on stage and pretends that he's paying attention, while she looks him up and down, says nothing, and looks away. Ezekiel turns his head back to look at her and says nothing. The sexual tension in this scene is so real and totally exists that they don't even need dialogue. I guess neither of them are a fan of small talk, or talking at all. Because once Ezekiel looks at and says nothing to her for like the 5th time, the scene cuts directly to the two of them entering his apartment together. After entering his apartment, the opera lady looks around the place and still says nothing, while Ezekiel still says nothing, and by this point the silence is so loud it's now distracting. On top of being distractingly silent, the scene is also distractingly dark. I'm pretty confident they were speaking to each other while they were filming this scene, but for whatever reason it was just muted during the editing process. I doubt that's the excuse for why it's so dark, but it doesn't matter because they take full advantage of the fact that you can't see shit in this scene, so hopefully you don't notice their lips moving in the dark. And now, with my ass cheeks on the edge of my seat from all of that buildup and tension from absolute silence, because I feel like I have to emphasize, I'm not exaggerating here, they have said nothing, not a goddamn word to each other the entire time they've been on screen together, the opera lady finally says,
"Wow. Great apartment."
They're making out now, by the way. Ladies and gentlemen, the master of nonverbal autistic riz himself, Ezekiel Sims. Their little embrace is shot from the other side of a tall glass enclosure so that when they leave to, I assume, f*** each other in complete silence, the camera changes focus to a spider inside that enclosure, which I'm mentioning now because it's about to be relevant, and while we're here, buckle up because the movie is about to go to shit. More shit than it already is. Everything I've described so far has been bad, but it wasn't until this moment where I realized no matter what this movie does with the remainder of its runtime, redemption is simply not possible. By this point, that ship has sailed, crashed into a Titanic-sized iceberg, and exploded on impact. Now I recognize this is a terrible way to start off making a point, but not to sound misogynistic when I say this, but I kinda thought this movie had only two things going for it leading up to its release. The first being that it would probably be bad and therefore unintentionally hilarious. The second part, and again, not to sound like a misogynist when I say this, but the spider women in the spider suits. It's not like I was counting down the days just to see Sydney Sweeney in this costume, but I'm sure somebody out there was. I think the suits look bad, but they sure as hell don't look bad in them. Or wait, they do look bad, but in the good way. It doesn't matter. Point is, these women are hot, and people like what they saw. So Ezekiel is lying in bed, covered in sweat, and he's having a bad dream where he can't find his spider that was in that glass enclosure, which can be gleaned from him simply saying,
"Where's my spider? They took my spider."
He then gets jumped by the spider women who just so happen to be that skateboarding girl Cassie almost hit with an ambulance, Sydney Sweeney, whose dad seems to hate her, and the apartment girl whose dad seems to not be around. The camera work is back to being nauseating, which waters down the cool factor of the action, which means it's not cool at all, and the whole thing lasts 50 seconds.
Like me.
Now you might be thinking, okay, so the execution was bad, but so is everything else in this movie so far. Why are you acting like this is the worst thing in the movie? Well, don't worry, I'll tell you. I vividly recall seeing this promo image of the 3 Spider-Girls posted to a Marvel subreddit, and the top comment read something along the lines of, "How much do you want to bet this is from the very end of the movie, right after they kill the bad guy?" If it were a real gamble, I probably would have bet a lot. I mean, if you just look at it, the glass is broken and they're looking down from somewhere really high up, so that theory seemed obviously true. And I even laughed saying it'll be really funny to see it in the movie and think, can you believe they released this as a promo image? But you know what? I'm glad that bet wasn't real, because to my surprise, that is not the context of this photo. And to my even greater surprise, the real context and what actually happens is somehow worse. In the dream sequence, Ezekiel gets kicked out of his penthouse and falls to his death. That is what this picture is from. If that doesn't sound so bad, you must not have heard, but that was it. That dream sequence I described, the thing they showed a bunch of footage of in the trailer that got some people excited to see the Spider-Girl suited up and kicking ass. Yeah, that was it. That is all this movie does with the Spider-Women. They never get or wear these suits in the present day at all. Apart from this dream sequence and like less than 30 seconds at the very end, which isn't even a dream, it's just Cassie's imagination, the Spider-Women never wear these suits or do anything with superpowers. Hell, they never get superpowers in this movie. So whether you're a girl who enjoys seeing new, badass female superheroes on the big screen, or just any guy who saw Euphoria, I regret to inform you this is the extent of the girls in the spider suits. But there's no time to mourn over that, so start coping now, because the movie has completely lost the plot, and that dream sequence is, unfortunately, the thing that starts the plot of this movie. So Ezekiel wakes up from this dream, and he finally, but also unfortunately, says words again.
Bad dream?
It's not a dream. I'm gonna be murdered one day.
This is clearly meant to be a serious situation, but there is nothing serious about this fucking guy, so it's just hilarious.
Oh, wow, that's a buzzkill.
They make up for last night by yapping in bed together as Ezekiel explains why and how the plot is about to unfold. He's had this dream many times before. Every time he does, it's always the same 3 girls. And he plans to take his doctor's advice about being proactive with his health by finding the girls and killing them first. But most importantly, and crucially, his plan to find them is to use mass surveillance and facial recognition technology, apparently. Sort of like what the NSA might have, but unfortunately for him, he doesn't have anything like that. What he does have, however, is a woman in bed next to him who works for the NSA. It's at this point we realize all that non-verbal awkward flirting at the opera happened only because Ezekiel knows he's scaring the hose when he talks. And also, he needs a way to track down people he's only seen in a dream. Man, this was all really convenient, huh? Who wrote this movie? Oh my god, it's the guys who wrote Morbius. This is the scene where we finally get to see what Cassie's dead mom named Constance was referring to when she said black poison touch, as Ezekiel fills her with black poison stuff.
How are you poisoning me?
What's your password? Tell me quickly before the paralysis reaches your lips, and I'll stop the poison.
So the lady gives Ezekiel her password, and he kills her.
I'll stop the poison.
The lie detector determined that was a lie.
Once he's done injecting black tar into her veins, he leans over her body and sets a new personal record for the worst line delivery, complimented by one of the worst lines in the movie, and says,
Believe me, it's a good thing you had no idea today was the day you were going to die.
The majority of Ezekiel's lines from this point on are just ADR. I don't know why, but it is, and you can really tell.
What if you saw who was going to murder you? You'd try to stop them.
Okay.
You have no idea of the torment and torture of dying over and over again.
Back to the not action, Cassie goes to a baby shower where Ben and a bunch of other random people are grilling out and having some cold drinks, which makes this the perfect place for a Pepsi commercial.
There you go.
Oh, thanks. You don't think that maybe in light of recent events I could use a beer?
Maybe it's a regional thing, but I've never seen a Pepsi can this loudly blue. Anyways, if you're wondering why the f we're at a baby shower now, don't worry. This isn't just any baby shower. It's a baby shower for Ben's sister-in-law, played by Emma Roberts of all people. And she's pregnant with a baby. Just like the movie did with Ben's new mystery girlfriend, they make it a point to bring the baby's name into question, and as you'd expect, they refuse to say what it is.
Does it have a name? We're
saving that for one of the games.
Games.
We can try to guess the name using what we know at this point, which is that in 2003, Ben Parker's sister-in-law is pregnant. Ben, this guy named Ben, is excited to be an uncle, and they're being intentionally mysterious about it, so I have to assume that this baby is pivotal to the story. I don't know, I'm stumped. I really wish they would just f***ing tell me the baby's name. Anyways, the movie cuts to a thrilling action sequence where everyone at the baby shower sits around and plays the game where you get a slip of paper and write down fond memories you have about your own mother, and then the soon-to-be mother picks them out randomly and reads them aloud. You know, the kind of game we've all played before at a baby shower. Peter, not Parker's mom, questions why Cassie's is blank, and she says she didn't know her mom.
My mother actually died in childbirth. Well, but it wasn't that bad. It wasn't like, I mean, obviously it was bad, you know. She died.
After killing the vibe, they play a different game where everyone tries to guess what the baby's name will be, so basically a dumb game the writers made up that nobody would ever play at a baby shower. And during this game, Cassie's new powers happen, or I guess go off again, I don't know.
Cassie, what's your guess?
Ben?
The name is...
Naturally, this confuses the f*** out of her since she just experienced the same moment back to back. So she asks what's happening because they just did this, which makes everyone around her start to theorize there may be some connection between her mother's death in childbirth and her behavior today resembling that of a paranoid schizophrenic.
I grew up totally healthy. We just did this.
The tension in this scene, which by the way definitely exists and is very high, is sadly shattered by Ben and Cassie leaving to respond to a fire down at the docks.
They're calling everyone in, fire down at the docks.
Cassie's future-seeing powers kick into high gear as she responds to the emergency and does her job as a paramedic to help this one guy, but oh no, that wasn't real! So after reliving the experience of tending to this victim, she talks to a different paramedic and she asks if she can drive the ambulance. This doesn't go her way because this paramedic is played by Andrew Tate and he says, no, you're a woman, you're probably a bad driver. Obviously, I just made that up, but what the f would you know? Odds are you never actually saw this movie. The script makes sure he doesn't let her drive so she can stand at the driver's side door while a vision of his death flashes before her eyes. So naturally, being the caring first responder that she is, Cassie says absolutely f***ing nothing and he drives off while she turns her back and walks away. And after trying to cross the first intersection, literally 7 seconds after driving away, he gets hit by a semi-truck and dies.
This is O'Neill. Clear up dockside.
It's here that we get the classic movie moment where everything slows down, the audio gets distorted, intentionally this time, and somber music plays. The movie, still assuming anyone gives a f*** about what's happening, presents this as a devastating loss.
We do not care.
Now that he has that woman's password, Ezekiel has full unlimited access to the NSA's mass surveillance systems, which apparently doesn't have multi-factor authentication enabled, nor does it trigger any kind of alert because I guess in this universe, the NSA just doesn't prioritize identity access management. So he has his woman in the chair do all the stuff he needs her to do on the computer, and through a very rigorous process that was never explained, described, and especially never shown on screen, this woman has made exact photorealistic renderings of the girls' faces based solely on how Ezekiel described seeing them in his dream. Using these renderings, they can now be alerted if any camera in existence spots them. Cassie visits the doctor and tells her about her symptoms, to which she receives no help and is just told she's probably experiencing symptoms from the time she nearly drowned after being trapped in a car that fell off a bridge. She goes home and watches old movies because the doctor was weirdly specific in her suggestions for how Cassie should be resting at home, which was to go home and watch old movies.
Get some rest. Watch old movies.
The scene drags out so Cassie can have her big superhero moment.
Hate to break it to you, Scrooge, but you can't change anything.
In which a bird randomly kamikazes into her window and shatters the glass while she's making microwave popcorn, but then, oh psych, the glass is fine and her popcorn only just now got done popping in the microwave. This experience gives her the confidence to know that her powers are real and she has to do something with them. So she puts on a red leather jacket and walks to the train station. Why, you may ask? Well, good question. The movie never says why, but I know the real answer and you're not gonna like it. It sounds like I'm just repeating the same joke over and over again, but it's not even a joke. Once the bird flies into her apartment alive and she has her popcorn again, she makes facial expressions that convey she's having thoughts about something, and then it just cuts to her walking into the train station. So no, it's not a joke. Cassie goes to the train station because if she doesn't, the rest of the movie will simply never happen. But Cassie is not the only one about to board a train, because all three girls are there too. Alone, separate, by themselves, because none of them know each other. What are the odds of them all being in the same place at the same time? That was not a rhetorical question, by the way. I'm quoting Ezekiel's woman in the chair.
What are the odds of them all being in the same place at the same time?
It's not a coincidence.
Ezekiel says it's not a coincidence since, I guess, he read the script too and knows that he has to go there in order for the plot to happen. So Cassie boards the train and we get a scene of her experiencing another train passing by, different people boarding and saying different things, and then it happens again and again and again and again, and I'm so f***ing tired of talking about this f***ing movie. God help me. During this time, Cassie sees all three girls board the train separately, and not long after, she sees flashes of a man wearing a suit killing the three girls. Once the visions stop and Cassie snaps back to reality, there goes gravity. She sees the same man making his way to their side of the train, so she tells the three random girls to get up and get off the train because they're going to die. Ezekiel notices the girls are now off the train with Cassie and starts to run in slow motion back toward them as the train has already started moving forward, and Cassie sees a vision of her getting arrested, which means they can't leave the way she planned, so she tells the girls they need a new plan. But the girls already have a plan, which is to yell for the cop standing 30 feet away that she's trying to kidnap them.
This woman's trying to abduct us.
What? No, that's not. Shh.
But fortunately for Cassie, this is New York, so the cops react by turning to look at them before doing nothing at all. Ezekiel shows up again, but this time he's ditched his fancy suit in favor of a Spider-Person suit, which is not fancy. Cassie and the girls try to get people to help them, but not a single person reacts. And I'm honestly not sure if canonically these people can't see Ezekiel when he's wearing this suit, or if again, it's just New York, no one gives a shit. They board a different train, then they decide to get off that train, then they run down to another level and find other cops who immediately place Cassie under arrest for kidnapping. But Ezekiel saves the day by swooping in and beating them all up. Almost 45 minutes into the movie, and this is the first traditional action sequence. As you've hopefully come to expect by now, it sucks. After Ezekiel moves like a shadowy boogeyman almost entirely off screen to deal with the cops who were already there, Cassie and the girls run upstairs past three more cops running downstairs, and Ezekiel dispenses of them in exactly 5 seconds. If that sounds cool, I promise it's not. The editing is bad, but I wouldn't say the fight choreography is bad because that implies there was choreography for a fight, which implies there was a fight that required choreography, and the only fighting that happened during this scene was the fighting happening inside of my head as I contemplated leaving the theater and just going home. Sorry to backtrack, but I'm rewatching this clip as I'm editing the video, and there were definitely 3 cops who ran down the flight of stairs, and there are still 3 cops who are in this lower level. There are still 3 cops on the platform when Ezekiel drops down, but there's a cut right here where there's just not a 3rd cop. I don't have an explanation for this, nor do I have any additional commentary on this scene. I just want to point this out to say, yeah, the movie's bad. Alright, that's it. Back to past me losing their sanity. Cassie and the girls make it up to the streets, and Cassie uses her superpower of quick thinking and street smarts to steal a taxi cab. Somehow, they all manage to come out of the subway 10 feet away from the only cab driver in Queens who would ever get out of their car to help someone get their bags and carry on having casual conversation, all while keeping their back turned to the car with the doors open and the engine running. Very convenient for Cassie. Alright, I'll admit I've ripped into everything really hard so far, not that it wasn't deserved, but I will take this chance to say that the 3 girls, Skateboard Girl, Apartment Girl, and Sydney Sweeney, actually do play off each other well enough to make these scenes a little less painful to watch. I cannot stress enough how sorry I feel for them because they are not bad actresses, and they are certainly not the reason that this movie is terrible. The girls are absolutely bewildered by Ezekiel's ability to defy the laws of physics and crawl on the ceiling. And since they don't know his name, they refer to him as just the ceiling guy. Since Ezekiel doesn't have a supervillain name besides his real name, I too am going to start referring to him as just the ceiling guy from here on out. So while they're freaking out, Cassie calms them down by telling them they're on their own because she doesn't want to help them or be in this movie, this situation, for reasons. You know what? I'm sure whatever the reason is, it's valid. Like her schedule for the day being totally booked with walking to different random locations waiting for stuff to happen. Cassie changes her mind when she hears over the radio about how the NYPD is looking for her in connection to kidnapping after eyewitnesses gave them her description. An interaction I assume went something like, well, she was a white woman and the cops promptly walked away, but then somehow later found out she was born in Peru and realized, oh no, she totally did kidnap them, she's definitely guilty. Cassie insists that she's not kidnapping them, but they also can't leave because they're the only ones who know what actually happened. Meanwhile, the ceiling guy is pissed off about them escaping, so the woman in the chair lets the audience know that they're going to find them once any camera in the country sees the face of any one of the girls. Cassie decides the best place for them to lay low is in the woods, which is where everyone starts to realize how they know each other. Sydney Sweeney recognizes Cassie as the paramedic who saved her stepmom and then was super awkward afterward.
That does sound like me.
Apartment Girl recognizes Cassie as living upstairs in her apartment building.
You leave your junk mail in the lobby and then everybody else has to clean it up for you.
Okay, well, there should be a recycling bin there.
Skateboard Girl says she's a total stranger to her, but...
No. You flipped me off.
Do you have the slightest idea how little that narrows it down?
The girls ask the big question anyone that's made it this far into the movie is asking too, which is simply, who are you, what is going on, why is this happening? Cassie says she can see the future, which is followed by what I think might be a nod to the bread scene from Spider-Man No Way Home. This kind of interaction would be cute if the movie already wasn't so ugly. Sydney Sweeney describes the ceiling guy in a new and very creative way, which I realize I myself used earlier to describe his suit.
It was like a spider person.
This line makes Cassie change her facial expression, and now she's thinking about a thought, and then says she needs to go check a couple things out. So she says she'll be back in a couple hours with food since everyone is starving.
All I have is gum.
Cassie drives the stolen taxi cab back into the city and goes to her apartment so she can check a couple things out, which, as you probably expect, yes, it's about her mom's spider research. She takes out the same book she randomly flipped through earlier and reads aloud a couple key words as she's skimming it until she gets to the part that contains the information she's looking for, which just so happens to be the spider people, las arañas.
Spider people.
She reads the cliff notes aloud to her cat, which I think might actually just be named Cat.
1 second, cat.
Just so the audience can hear her obtaining and processing the information she needs in order for the rest of the movie to happen. She learns las arañas can climb walls like spiders.
Just like ceiling guy.
We then get what is probably the only real funny moment in the movie, as in it was written to be intentionally funny, where Cassie tries to climb the wall in her apartment and does not succeed. If this were a better movie, this would probably make me lightly exhale from my nostrils, but it's not. So she gives up and goes back to reading, learns the spider people have a sixth sense that involves seeing glimpses into the future, and finally, after all that, she flips to the back of the book and finds a photo of her mom in the Amazon next to none other than the ceiling guy. Still in the middle of the woods, the three girls are talking about whatever girls talk about when they're alone, and while like I said, these are easily the least worst parts of the movie, they unfortunately don't really matter, or at least I don't give a shit about them, so all you need to know is that skateboard girl has very rich parents that she never sees because they're in China, so she lives alone, apartment girl is broke, and Sydney Sweeney lives with her dad and stepmom, but is also hesitant to not do what Cassie said, which was to stay put in the woods. She gets peer pressured into leaving the woods and going to a diner. So they walk through the woods until they eventually reach the diner where they plan to eat and say nothing to anybody, but that plan is short-lived when a group of guys make eye contact with them and suddenly their safety is worth compromising just to talk to them. A random patron recognizes the girls and calls 911 to report them as the kidnapping victims, which is overheard by the woman in the chair, and she notifies the ceiling guy. Ceiling guy impersonates a cop by calling into dispatch and saying he's already there, they're not the missing girls, and nobody else should respond to the scene. Which works. Cassie finally makes it back in the same stolen taxi cab to find the teenage girls she just met did not listen to her when she told them to stay put in the middle of the woods for 3 hours. Cassie jogs in the direction she assumes they went and quickly finds the diner outside the middle of the woods where all three girls are on top of the guy's table dancing to Toxic by Britney Spears playing over the radio. She scolds them for not listening to her, something teenage girls are very famously known for doing all the time, especially when it's coming from someone they don't know, and Sydney Sweeney's the only one who seems to feel bad and apologizes. Sadly for her, it's too late for apologies.
I'm so sorry.
Surprise, motherfucker!
Because ceiling guy casually strolls into the diner, leaps toward the first random guy he sees minding his own business, and bashes his head into a window. He then proceeds to grab Sydney Sweeney's head and breaks her neck over the back of a chair. The guys in the back freak out, realizing they're not going to get laid tonight, and Cassie breaks a glass bottle over ceiling guy's head, so he picks her up, jumps onto the ceiling, and throws Cassie across the diner. Keep in mind, Toxic is still playing during all of this and is getting increasingly louder. So the ceiling guy keeps going and grabs skateboard girl by the throat and lifts her up to ask her what she did with the Death Star plans, and once he's done, he throws her body on the table. And Cassie grabs a knife, which ends up being a fatal mistake as she's quickly disarmed and stabbed in the stomach, and oh wait, nope. Cassie is back in the woods and the radio just now started playing Toxic. So this time she races to the diner in the stolen cab instead of walking while the girls get up on the table to dance. In a diner, which I don't think was socially acceptable even in 2003, but whatever. The ceiling guy walks in and kills the vibe and walks toward the girls to kill them too, but Cassie saves the day by driving the stolen taxi cab straight through the entrance and hitting him with it. Before they can all drive off, ceiling guy grabs Cassie's wrist and pumps some of his black poison into her, but she gets him to stop by kicking the door of the car, which I guess is stronger than him, and they drive off. She scolds the girls in the car for not listening. Meanwhile, ceiling guy continues to say words that don't match his lips, as his woman in the chair tells him she docks the woman helping them and says she's the daughter of Constance Webb.
Did you say Webb?
This is, according to Ceiling Guy, not possible. You know what, Ceiling Guy? I wish you were right. I wish it truly wasn't possible, because then this movie wouldn't fucking exist. Cassie takes the girls to a random motel, and the girls start explaining why none of their parents are in any of their lives. Sydney Sweeney's mom couldn't cope with the divorce and got sent to a psych ward, so she got sent to live with her dad and his new family, who don't want her there. Skateboard girl tells her about her parents, since Cassie wasn't there when she first talked about it, and Cassie's advice to them is to go to the police, who, as far as we know, are still actively looking to arrest her for kidnapping, but apartment girl shoots this down by revealing her dad got deported 6 months ago and she doesn't want them to know that she's 17 living alone. Cassie still does not want to help them, so Sydney Sweeney flat out says,
Cassie, please help us.
As the seeds slowly begin to sprout for the we are each other's family plant, which will end up not growing because, I don't know, it's fucked up and can't properly do photosynthesis or something. I don't know. I fucking hate this movie. Once the girls are all sound asleep, Cassie sneaks out to drive the still stolen taxi cab to the diner outside the woods, aka the scene of a crime that she committed, but thankfully no cops or anybody for that matter are there. So she's able to just walk underneath some caution tape and go inside. So far, this movie has never used a consistent editing technique to convey when something is real or is just a vision, but the most consistent thing is that it makes you nauseous or trigger triggers epilepsy, if that's something you have, and this time it's cranked up to 101, as Cassie sees Ceiling Guy in the diner who tells her everything she needs to know.
In the future, I've become much more. In the future, they will destroy me and everything I've built.
While the audience is having a seizure, Ceiling Guy tells Cassie he's doing all of this because he's the one who has powers, and explains why he's targeting the girls.
The only thing I know is that in the future, they also have powers.
The girls? The girls have powers in the future?
Every word spoken is echoed, distorted, repeated, or doesn't match their lips, or all of it at once. It's just incredible. This truly is a movie. Ceiling Guy ends his ADR exposition by talking and taunting Cassie over her dead mom.
You shut up.
That's why your shoes raggedy.
That's why your mama dead. Dead as hell. What shoes she got on? What shoes she had on her casket?
To which Cassie wakes up in bed in the motel room. So I guess none of that was real. She just dreamed that she walked into the crime scene at the diner and saw visions of Ceiling Guy who told her everything she needed to know. Okay. In the morning, Cassie wakes up the girls and tells them everything she knows from reading her mom's book and also talking to a vision of Ceiling Guy in a dream she just had, and then teaches them how to perform CPR just in case any of them go into cardiac arrest from getting the black poison touch, and eventually shows them the photo of her mom with Ceiling Guy. Now, I'm 99% sure this is where the infamous but iconic trailer line was from, but it's not in the movie. It's at this point that Cassie announces she's going to step out for a minute and take a week-long trip to Peru so she can get more information. It makes sense, I guess. I just hope there's someone there waiting specifically for you just to tell you everything you need to know. Cassie leaves the girls with Uncle Ben, who has no idea what is going on but agrees to watch them anyways, and Cassie drives away in the still stolen taxi cab, which at this point now has very visible front end damage after she drove it into a fucking diner. Doesn't matter though. The movie cuts straight from this scene to Peru because even the writers realized it made no sense that she made it to a different country without the woman in the chair being alerted to her boarding a flight or the NYPD arresting her for kidnapping. With the help of some old photographs and a map that she has no problem understanding, Cassie makes her way through the Amazon and finds one of the exact spots her mom took a picture of, when suddenly the Peruvian spider guy from the very beginning spawns in right behind her. Only now he's not dressed like the treetop spider people. Instead, he's dressed like he's about to give a tour of the property of a mid-tier beach resort. He introduces himself and says his name is Santiago, except I'm lying again, I had to look that up on IMDb. Instead, he tells her he's here because he told her mom he would be. Santiago takes the exposition gun and mag dumps into the audience as he very quickly tells Cassie that her mom thought she was safe, but Ceiling Guy used her just to get to them and ended up stealing the spider, so ever since then he's been cursed and is trying to outrun his destiny. He shows her where her mom gave birth to her and died.
This is where my mom died?
And where you were born.
And Cassie quickly lets him and the audience know that she doesn't understand why her mom went here and did all of this.
To see the future clearly, you have to heal the wounds of your past.
Just before he plagiarizes Doctor Strange and pushes her spiritual form out of her body and into the water. Cassie gets sent on a badly edited trip through the past where she sees her mom and Ceiling Guy from the opening scene, to which she asks her mom,
She really is trying her best to keep me from working. Not when I'm this close, but I'm not gonna let her do that.
Why did you hate me so much?
Cassie watches her mom get shot and saved by the spider people, give birth, and die, and finally shows something that isn't just a reuse scene from the beginning, in which Cassie's mom is told by a doctor that her baby has
myasthenia gravis.
I'm having a hard time deciding if this scene or that vision dream encounter in the diner earlier is funnier. The editing is terrible in both, and the line delivery plus the audio quality makes this one a solid rival. Like when the doctor's echoing voice says,
It's a genetic neuromuscular disorder.
But I don't have a neuromuscular disorder.
Life expectancy varies.
The doctor says there's no cure, and without any hesitation, her mom starts to ramble about a very specific type of experimental and expensive treatment with leads in the Amazon, to which Cassie makes sure nobody in the audience is left confused or wondering anything for less than 1 second, and asks her dead mom, who is just a vision,
There are some promising leads in the Amazon.
That's why you went there? For me?
The doctor tells her that she's advising her not to travel given the fact that she is pregnant as f***, and so Cassie's mom says that she's unwilling to accept the diagnosis of helplessness, which makes no sense because the doctor did not diagnose her with helplessness, she diagnosed her baby with myasthenia gravis.
I don't have a neuromuscular disorder.
Life expectancy.
Why did Constance Webb say this? Is she stupid or something?
And I'm not gonna teach my daughter to either.
Upon hearing this, Cassie's face turns into the I'm about to cry face, so Dakota Johnson covers her face with her hands while she prepares herself, then brings them down to cover just her mouth because she's still not sure if she's going to laugh at herself or not. Then she moves her hands to cover her heart and tells her mom,
You did it. You did it. I never knew I was sick. The spider venom did have healing properties. I'm so sorry I spent so long being mad at you.
Okay, so they hug and the music swells for this moment of healing over an open wound for Cassie left by her mom's death in childbirth. And this sequence is just insanely bizarre. This movie has proven thus far that it loves to reveal information to the audience by having characters speak like people would never talk, just for the sake of revealing information to the audience. And it just feels weird that this is the one thing we were never told about. Like the entire movie, we have no idea how Cassie feels about her mom. When I first watched this movie, I just assumed that Cassie was generally upset that her mom was dead and she never knew her because, I don't know, I feel like that's a very normal thing to feel when your mom is dead. But no, the entire time, Cassie is just mad at her mom because she thought that she prioritized her spider research over her unborn life. And we don't find this out until immediately before she enters whatever the fuck this sequence was. There's one thing I noticed which really bugs me, and no, it wasn't a spider. Do you remember that time when Cassie's mom made an offhand mention to the spiders being able to cure a bunch of different diseases?
These little spiders have the potential to cure hundreds of diseases.
No, of course you don't. And I doubt anyone else who actually saw this movie did either. That one line really felt like it was meant to be a setup for this. And I use that tense because when Cassie sees her mom in the past, and they show a bunch of footage from the very beginning of the movie, they just don't include that line. But I will say, props to Dakota Johnson because you can tell by this point, she figured out that someone lied to her when she signed on for this movie. And she's really struggling to not burst out laughing as she remembers that she's being paid money to say these lines.
You did it.
Thank you for holding in your laughter because I could not keep mine in when I watched this. You know what? Honestly, after all of that, it's not even close anymore. That dream scene in the diner has officially been dethroned. This is my new favorite scene in the entire movie. Since the movie is getting close to being over and we haven't even had a big third act fight between the main character and the main villain yet, Santiago lets the audience, Cassie, know that she has now unlocked her powers. Finally. She can finally hold her own against Ceiling Guy after she masters the power to use the web to be in the same place at the same time.
I don't have a neuromuscular disorder.
You know what? I don't even give a shit anymore. I just want this f***ing movie to be over. Cassie is waiting for someone to give her the motivation she needs, and since Uncle Ben isn't here, Santiago has to be the one to do it. So he tells Cassie not what she wants to hear, but what she needs to hear. How she needs to be mindful of the great responsibility she now has thanks to this great power she's inherited. And with a line that continues the legacy of one of the most iconic quotes of all time that has now spanned over 6 decades, Santiago makes it all come full circle and says,
And when you take on the responsibility, great power will come.
I'm sorry, I must have heard that wrong.
When you take on the responsibility, great power will come.
If you don't shut your f***ing mouth, I will kill you.
Honestly, should I even make fun of this? Like, would it have been worse if he just straight up said the real thing? This movie has been acting like it's embarrassed to be associated with Spider-Man, which is how I feel about the movie myself, so should I be thankful and just celebrate this? Doesn't matter, I don't care anymore, because the scene just cut to Ceiling Man talking, clearly mid-sentence by the way.
Every day that goes by, my appointment with death gets closer.
Yeah, I know, man. I'm counting down the days myself. Ceiling Guy and Chair Lady can't find the girls because they're still with Uncle Ben, who thankfully did not deliver that not iconic line just a minute ago. This whole time, they've never left the house, but little baby Peter Not Parker makes his presence known, so they all have to leave to rush Emma Roberts to the hospital. They turn a corner and Skateboard Girl's face is caught on camera, so Chair Lady and Ceiling Guy find out where they are. Thank God, because otherwise the final battle wouldn't happen and this movie would never end. Cassie, still driving around in the stolen taxi cab with visible front end damage, goes to their house and realizes they're not there. Even though her powers are kinda lame, she's very lucky to have them because she sees flashes of what's about to happen, so she knows where she needs to go in order for what's about to happen to actually happen. Before she gets back in the damaged stolen taxi cab, an ambulance arrives because Ben called for them before being told there was no time to wait, so with her quick thinking, Cassie continues to push the boundaries of the stereotype that middle-class white women are all kleptomaniacs and steals the fucking ambulance. The movie is almost over, and you can really tell by this point the editors just stopped giving a fuck, because they obviously did not have enough audio samples of Emma Roberts acting like she's having contractions. So their solution was to take one sample, loop it 2 times, and put all 3 in to make this beautiful scene.
That's pretty fast.
You better hurry up, because I am not sticking around if it gets gross.
Okay.
The chair lady starts playing Watch Dogs and makes all the traffic lights green, so after not crashing and just coming to a stop with all the cars bunched together, they see Ceiling Guy on the building in front of them. Cassie is racing to the rescue in the ambulance she just stole, while the camera keeps zooming in on it for what I think they think is dramatic effect. Speaking of dramatic, Ceiling Guy jumps down onto the hood of their car and pulls out a thermal detonator from Star Wars, when suddenly Cassie drives the ambulance through a Calvin Klein billboard, which causes Ceiling Guy to leap forward into the exact position the ambulance is falling because, gravity. On top of having no sense of perspective, Ceiling Guy also has butterfingers and loses the thermal detonator. So while Cassie throws that shit in reverse like the badass she is, a taxi cab that Cassie didn't steal and drive into a diner blows up. And like 2 or 3 other cars blow up too. Cassie handles that steering wheel like an absolute beast. The music hits all the right notes so you know this is her big superhero moment, and she gets all the girls out of the car. Cassie tells Ben to take Emma Roberts and stop being in the movie since Ceiling Guy doesn't care about them anymore, and she drives off with the girls in the ambulance. We finally see the girls have learned how to work together as a team after all that time bonding and training together, a thing which definitely happened, as they follow Cassie's master plan to charge a defibrillator. So Ceiling Guy turns into a shitty CGI asset and leaps from car to car as he tries to catch up to them. Apartment Girl holds the defibrillators up to the roof of the ambulance, so when Ceiling Guy leaps on top, he is promptly shocked. Not the kind of you can see their skeletons shocked, the kind of shocked when you're a kid and your friend tells you to pull out this stick of gum. Cassie uses her driving superpower to turn the wheel really hard and hit a parked car, which sends Ceiling Guy flying off the top and into the back of another parked car.
Sorry.
They manage to get away, but the ambulance breaks down under a bridge, and Cassie gets another lucky break by seeing glimpses into the future. And by future, I mean the next 10 minutes or so, which gives her all the information she needs in order to do the thing she needs to do in order for the things she saw happening, which were things she was doing, to actually happen. I can rephrase. She saw quick flashes of things she's going to do in just a few minutes, so now she knows exactly where she needs to go and what she needs to do to make sure she does exactly what she saw herself doing in just a few minutes. I'm not kidding. This is the movie. Cassie uses the ambulance radio to call for air rescue by the docks and tells everyone to get out because it's not over yet, since she knows how the movie ends. The girls have no idea what is happening and have their own concerns, as they should, like how the building they're running toward doesn't look safe. A very reasonable concern, to which Cassie responds by saying,
Well, it's full of explosives and it's structurally unsound.
We're all gonna die!
Cassie's master plan is to give everyone a bunch of flares and put them in as many crates as they can, which they do without question. Ceiling Guy shows up and immediately just starts blowing up. Cassie and the girls run away, which was part of the plan, as everything begins to blow up and Ceiling Guy starts running too. This shot from the trailer is from this riveting action sequence, which, just to recap, involves Cassie handing out flares to the girls, which they place between a bunch of different crates. Ceiling Guy shows up and looks around for about 10 seconds before the first crate blows up. Cassie and the girls run away and Ceiling Guy tries to escape too while everything else starts blowing up. It's very intense. Cassie's superpower of luck saves her own life again as Ceiling Guy leaps toward her in slow motion, but he's intercepted and carried away mid-air by a random projectile. Cassie yells for the girls to get down as another projectile flies at the brick wall in front of them, leaving a perfectly human-sized hole for them to escape through. They run upstairs to the roof of the building where a helicopter is waiting, and also where a giant old-school Pepsi-Cola sign is. I guess now we know how they got their budget for this final battle, and they have to run across the top of the building where the helicopter can land. Cassie future sees a spot next to them blowing up, so she makes them stand still and hunch down as it blows up for real. Projectiles continue to fly everywhere while metal shrapnel nearly impales the girls multiple times, so Cassie grabs a metal sheet and turns into Captain America while she shields the girls from the stuff exploding around them. They get to the top, but Cassie future sees Ceiling Guy coming up there too, but then something else blows up exactly where they have to be in order to be rescued, and we get a surprise cameo from the superhero Captain Obvious as the helicopter pilot who says, "Get down!
It's not safe to land."
They move to the new location and Ceiling Guy finally shows up. She yells at Sydney Sweeney to get down, so an explosive projectile flies above her into Ceiling Guy, who pulls out an Uno reverse card and punches it directly into the helicopter. It is here that the final battle commences, in which Ceiling Guy manhandles Cassie while each one of the girls attempt one attack move on him, each time failing and nearly falling to their death, but instead they each just hold on for dear life wherever they are.
Over here, asshole!
Come here, come here, come here, come here. Come here, come here.
bitch.
This puts Cassie in a very difficult spot, which Ceiling Guy notices because he's standing in front of her and points this out by saying,
You can't save all three!
This empowers Cassie to reflect on her hero's journey, how far she's come since she decided for no reason to get on the train that just so happened to start the plot of the movie, how much she's grown in the last 20 minutes after getting back from Peru without being arrested somehow. And through all of this, Cassie remembers Santiago's famous words, "When you take on the responsibility, this movie will finally fucking end." So while Ceiling Guy stands in front of her doing nothing, Cassie uses the web to astral project herself to save all three girls at once. Ceiling Guy had a character arc of his own off screen at some point, since he's now chivalrous, or at least kind enough to let Cassie do the thing he said she couldn't do 15 seconds ago, and only once she's done does his fist send her flying into the back of the Pepsi-Cola sign. Cassie eyes the letter S in Pepsi because it was in that flashing vision earlier, so she makes her way up further and moves backwards slowly while Ceiling Guy follows her. She gets more flashes from her future-seeing powers, which confirm to her that she's doing what she needs to be doing. Ceiling Guy keeps advancing forward as she moves backwards, then she falls down and he keeps advancing, but he's stopped by a bunch of falling metal that pins him against the catwalk and the railing, and apparently he's not strong enough to lift this off of him, so he has to stay and listen to Cassie tell him,
You've been trying to change your future. But the girls were never your future. I was.
The old building says, "Don't worry, I got one more still in the chamber," and another explosive projectile flies at the Pepsi-Cola sign, hitting the letter S, and the catwalk starts to collapse. Cassie's half manages to stay intact because, as we've established, luck is one of her superpowers, but Ceiling Guy isn't so lucky. The part where he's pinned down by metal collapses and he falls in slow motion, yelling on the way down before hitting the ground. The fall wasn't that bad though, he's alive and he's got superpowers anyway.
Statement withdrawn.
I guess superpowers don't protect your brain because there's a pool of blood forming behind his head. And yeah, he's dead.
Finally!
Part of me wonders if Pepsi knew this was how they were going to have their product placement used. I mean, sure, he didn't drink Pepsi and die, but in a way, Pepsi still killed him.
He was quite fond of the drink.
Ah.
It was the drink that killed him.
How awful. He was an alcoholic.
No, he was hit by a Guinness truck.
Cassie's luck finally runs out and her section of the sign and catwalk collapses, so she falls into the water and starts sinking to the bottom. Despite her superpower being the ability to glimpse into the future, Cassie is unable to see a projectile flying into the water and striking her directly in the face. I guess since it had nothing to do with advancing the plot, the writers just didn't let her in on that one. Cassie continues to sink until she's rescued by Sydney Sweeney. The girls perform CPR on her and she wakes up. So thank God she taught them how to do that like 25 minutes ago. The girls rejoice and say, "We did it." Meanwhile, Cassie can't see anything because she's fucking blind now, but yeah, whatever, they did it. Peter, not Parker, was born and Emma Roberts holds him while Uncle Ben stands next to her, and I actually forgot for 1 second that he's Uncle Ben and he's not the father. The dad isn't here, and the movie has never made sense, so forgive me. Cassie is in the hospital too, and the girls visit her. They make a reference to Ben being an uncle so he can have all the fun with none of the responsibility. A nurse walks in and asks if they're all family, to which Cassie tells her, "They're all mine." You'd think the scene would end right here, but there's still room for one more cliche, which comes in the form of Cassie being asked if she needs anything, to which she says she has everything she needs right here. At some point in the not-so-distant future after being discharged from the hospital, Cassie is in a new apartment wearing sunglasses inside so everyone knows that she is blind even though nobody is in her apartment but her. And she's staring out the window because somehow she knows where that is despite being blind, and she's sitting in a wheelchair because she's blind? I don't fucking know anymore, man. The girls show up to her apartment with Chinese takeout and Sydney Sweeney inquires about her vision, to which Cassie says she can see better than she ever has before. A very bold lie considering she's fucking blind. An apartment girl asks if she can see them in the future, to which Cassie says yes and proceeds to describe how she sees them in the future. She tells them she sees them standing up for what they believe. As the movie steals a shot of a building directly from the original Spider-Man movie, and the spider women in the spider suits from Ceiling Guy's dream run around beating up bad guys in front of a really bad green screen. And no, not like notable villains, I mean like individual random thieves and just dudes. She sees them never giving up, discovering they were always more powerful than they thought.
Nothing I didn't already know.
She turns back to the window to look out of it using her eyes, which don't work anymore, and she's still sitting in her wheelchair because She can't walk due to brain damage from getting hit in the head? I'm asking. I don't know, because the movie never said. And to close out this cinematic masterpiece, we get a tease of a sequel, as we see Cassie's future vision imagination, which shows her wearing the red Madam Web suit and visor.
Don't wear that outfit again.
Which is edited in behind the same shot of the Spider-Girls from Ceiling Guy's dream when he fell out of the window. And Cassie narrates saying, "Whatever the future holds, we'll be ready." And you know the best thing about the future?
It hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, spoiler alert, it never will.
Well, I'm out, guys. If this is what's cool now, I think I'm done. I no longer have any connection to this world. I'm gonna go home and kill myself. Goodbye, friends.
Oh, sorry. As far as closing discussions and summaries go, not much really has to be said besides, it's bad. But you already know that because you either saw it yourself or you just took my word for it. Or you saw it yourself and you thought it was good. In which case, I don't believe you. You do not exist. Instead of summarizing all the dumb, stupid, convoluted, confusing, baffling, and asinine things that happened in this movie, I want to go back to when we first got to 2003 and met Cassandra Webb and Ben Parker. You may recall that when we first met Ben, I brought up unconfirmed, but probably true, rumors that this movie was originally going to be a prequel to an established Spider-Man. Now that you've heard me describe the entire movie to you, you're probably wondering, how in the absolute hell could this movie have been a prequel to any version of Spider-Man? Well, my friend, there's a key detail from that rumor that I didn't mention before, because I forgot about it. And when I remembered, I figured it would just be better to put it here. Sorry. If we are to believe, which I personally do, that this rumor of a supposed Spider-Man prequel is true, the Madam Web movie, as it exists, simply does not make sense as said prequel, because like many movies before it that have been plagued by studio interference and cartoonish levels of incompetence, the final product is a Frankenstein's monster of a film. The plot of this movie did not originally start because the bad guy had a dream the Powerpuff Girls broke in at night and killed him. The original plot of this movie was, allegedly, that Madam Web is trying to stop Ezekiel Sims from trying to stop Peter Parker from being born. When I remembered this detail about the rumor and went back to read more of it, it recontextualized everything I had seen, and that's why I wanted to include this here. In Madam Web, the plot is beyond stupid. The setup is just silly. Everything has been changed or altered with ADR. Literally nothing makes sense. But when you view all of this as a last-ditch effort by Sony to do the least amount of work to release something with actors and things happening in places for a runtime equal to that of a typical motion picture, it just kinda makes sense. I'm sure there's more that could be said, but I really don't feel like saying anything else about this movie. So, for those of you watching who have been subscribed since my last upload, which was posted a year ago, I want to apologize and give you a little update. If you've seen my previous videos and you liked them, thank you for the support, I really appreciate it. I unfortunately don't like them. I'm not going to go into detail on the individual issues I have with all the videos I've uploaded in the last 4 years. I'll just say that I don't think they have any rewatch value, and depending on the video in question, I don't think it will hold up or already doesn't hold up. I know it's only been a year since my last upload, but I don't think it, and especially the ones before it, are very reflective of the content I can make now. Some of them especially are not very reflective of the content that I want to make, and what I will make going forward. But hey, that's just what being a creator is all about. While I was away, I was finishing up school, and I just kinda lost the motivation I once had to make videos. It was a time-consuming process, and the passion I once had just wasn't there. It's still time-consuming, but I think the passion part just came with the undiagnosed ADHD, which, yeah, that's a thing, or was a thing. It's fine now. All of that is to say, I'm back. I'm not stepping into the creative space I fill when I make videos by thinking to myself, I need this video to blow up. I think that's part of what originally killed the passion for me. Way back in 2020, during the start of the pandemic, I uploaded my first video to the channel where I ranted about why I hated The Rise of Skywalker. I made that video because I wanted to. It was just fun to make. That's how I'm approaching this now. I'm just having fun. If you've been here since then, or you got in because of my Obi-Wan Kenobi video, then thank you for staying to see if I'd ever come back after a year. I hope you stick around because I do plan to upload much more regularly. I'm gonna try out some new things from time to time. I've got some project ideas for bigger videos that I have planned way in advance from when I actually want them out to you all. And in the time that I've been away, my Instagram has become like a de facto meme page. I now have more followers on Instagram than I have subscribers on YouTube, which is cool, but at the same time, it's kind of like, I don't know, I was a YouTuber who had an Instagram, and now it's more like I run a meme page that has a YouTube channel attached to it. Since I'm coming back to uploading more regularly, I've reactivated my Patreon, which I will actually be using now. I know that I literally just said I'm making videos for fun, but I am an adult human being living on planet Earth, so unfortunately, I have to pay money to live. I'm also a grifter, or a shill, depending on who you ask. And as such, I believe in nothing and will say anything if you give me money. I have spent so much time on this video that there are just so many TV shows I haven't seen, like Percy Jackson, Shogun, Invincible Season 2, X-Men 97, Fallout. I haven't even seen a single episode of The Bad Batch Season 3 yet. I think I'm gonna go rewatch the entire series and make a video on it.